So this prayer I'm going to share is about the merging of the heavens and the earth, and the subtle walk in between where we're holding all of it at once. It's the subtle spiritual talk, the spiritual walk of enlightenment, holding ourselves as multidimensional beings. Ishem Yakud Kudushabrihu Ushihinte Be Ilu or Ilu Laihad Shem Yuke Bavoke Bida Shalom Hashem Kosriel Kolam Amen. So just take a moment of silence. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of show and tell over there, and so you can see where I live and understand the work that's being done. So that's the Tree of Life in Arizona. This is the mountain, and that mountain there, if you notice, that you can see a breast and a head on the left side, and that mountain is 8 feet deep in amethyst. It's a very powerful mountain, and this is a place where we do Native American spirit dance. The tree and the mountains around, and this is what you'll be getting on Sunday called Shaktipat, the descent of grace. It's a different form of lightning with rainbows coming afterwards. This is an all-natural setting. This is straw bale construction. I'm not sure if you have that here. A little bit of the places where people stay, our outdoor cafe. We're mostly outdoors where we live because it's kind of what we call high desert. This is some of our gardens. We do a thing called veganic gardening. Now how many people have heard of veganic gardening? Not too much, right. You will hear about it because in today's world, we're dealing with the genetically engineered foods. And organic gardening still is using manure and bone meal and blood meal from animals that may be fed genetically engineered food. In veganic farming, nothing comes from an animal. It all comes from the soil and what we add to it. And our work is to energize the topsoil so it will give birth to all kinds of really good food. And it's actually at least 10% more effective than even conventional conventional farming and conventional farming, because we're activating the goddess in the topsoil, that life force energy. This is a special ritual bath. This is a teepee, and this is called a medicine wheel. We do a lot of work with Native American. This is a special kind of solar greenhouse. It can work up to 25 degrees below zero, which is centigrade, which, I don't know, maybe 10 degrees negative centigrade. And it's like a Garden of Eden. Yeah. Oh, that's much better. That's what I was asking. Much better, much better. Okay. Very good. So this is how we eat. We eat all this food that is fresh within one day. This is my wife and I doing a little bit of yoga. So that you shouldn't try unless you practiced a little yoga. This is an inipi or sweat lodge. That's me kind of doing what we call the pipe ceremony there. This is a labyrinth. It's the largest Chartres labyrinth in the world. It actually snows once or twice a year. Our little meditation hall, the mountains. And this is how people can reach us for any kinds of things I may suggest, supplements. And here I am in East Jerusalem, talking with a Muslim, or talking about peace and spirituality. This is a fasting retreat in really Israel, but covering about 15 different nations. People come there. And this is, again, the fasting retreat. This is a talk about veganism in Israel. This is me with probably the leading Native American in the United States, Dennis Banks. He cured his diabetes in my program, and the Native Americans suffered greatly from diabetes. Maybe 90% of the people have diabetes. So we have programs that we're developing to help people with this, because actually every Native American that's come has gotten healed. This is a peace talk. This is Ethiopia, where we have a program there also, diabetes prevention, and again, teaching live veganic foods. This lady came, her name is Bhatti, to train at the Tree of Life. This is some of the people at her center. And here she is at the Tree of Life, what we're talking. These are kids in Nigeria, in a place that people may remember called Biafra. And we have a school there, a diabetes program there. And again, the kids in the school have their own garden and greenhouse that we've all supported and got together, and they're getting into vegetables. Okay? And this is in Ghana, where we have another program, again, bringing the vegan live food, which is very, very important for treating diabetes. This is the conference in Ghana that I spoke at. This is our center in Ghana, where we feed, overall we feed about 1,200 people a week. This is Mexico. That's my wife right there in the brown. And again, live foods. And this is the orphanage. Here we are in Buenos Aires. This is in Papua New Guinea, where 40% of the population has diabetes. That's the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea. Whole nations are very, very interested in taking on the diet that will prevent diabetes. See, the idea isn't just to treat it. The idea is to prevent it from happening. And they understand that. So he's pretty happy. This is me giving a live TV show in Papua New Guinea. And this is talking to people in Ethiopia. And this is a medical school in Ethiopia. This is a kind of a gathering by the Dead Sea in 2012, December 21st. And we do have a school, and actually some people from Brazil have come and attended the school, like Katia, who's one of the organizers for this coming week. She's part of that. This is our veganic farming. We have a cafe apprenticeships where people can learn to prepare the live food. It's a 6-month apprenticeship, and that's our center. And so that gives you an overview that this is a worldwide effort to transform the consciousness of the planet and not only bring people towards a plant source only diet, but it's much more than that. Because what we're talking about is eating in a way that transforms consciousness. See, what we eat is both the cause and result of our actions. So when we eat food that doesn't have death, misery, pain in it, we create a quiet mind. We create a mind that can transcend and wake up to the higher realities. We create in essence, a refined mind. From my point of view, the point of life isn't about being healthy. That's too materialistic. It really is about clearly being healthy, but transcending the mind to ultimately know the divine. That's the real point of the whole story. And this diet supports that. creating a healthy mind, a healthy body, and a healthy planet. So it's not a new idea. This idea of plant source only really has been the ethic of this planet for the first, in this whole 6,000 year cycle. In Genesis it says, you know, behold, I've given you every herb and grass of the field and every fruit of a seed-bearing tree. It should be your food. So there's nothing new about it. It's just that we lost track of it. And now, we're now seeing how important it is. So what's the germ cell? Anybody know what a germ cell is? It's the ovum and the sperm. It's called what we need for the survival of the species. And right now, because of all the radiation, the pesticides and herbicides, the genetically engineered food, all those things, our ability to reproduce has really decreased. How much? Well, between 2007 and 2009, women between the ages of 20 and 24 had 9% less reproduction ability. And between 25 and 29, about 6%. Now, what does that mean? Is we're slowly losing our ability to reproduce as a species from all the things. Now, here's something that can help a lot. It's called eat lower on the food chain. Because when you eat meat, fish, chicken, and dairy, what's happening is that the radiation, the pesticides, and herbicides are all concentrated about 30 times higher, 15 to 30 times higher. So the lower you eat, the safer it is. That's the key here. And this is the fertility rates. And I'm just going to explain, again, a little bit the different levels of the veganism, because without really understanding this, you can't really understand what diabetes is. Okay? So I'm going to explain it, and then we'll talk about it more on Sunday. What is diabetes? Diabetes is a symptom of a world out of balance. In India, we call it pratyapahara, crime against wisdom. And so when the whole world is eating white flour, white sugar, junk food, all kinds of soft drinks, the rate of diabetes is now beginning to skyrocket. There's more to it, which we'll get into detail, but that's the point. It's a crime against wisdom. And when we kind of understand that, we see, wow, it's just a symptom. It's not a disease that kind of is happening in a vacuum. It's connected to a world lifestyle, a world lifestyle. And you will see on Sunday that, in fact, in Brazil, the rate of diabetes is really seriously starting to increase. So it is really everywhere. So once we kind of understand that, we start to get a feeling for how important it is to change our whole life so we don't have this symptom called diabetes. Another symptom, cancer. Another symptom, heart disease. These are symptoms of a world out of balance. All the violence in the world, symptoms of a world out of balance. So our work is to go deeper and start to and be healing the planet. That's why you see me talking all over the world. It's about healing the planet, healing ourselves. We and the planet are not separate. That's the key. Okay, so it does preserve your personal health. For example, people who eat meat have 35 to 50% more diabetes. They just released a 28-year study at the Harvard School of Public Health. It showed that people who eat meat once a day have 18 to 21% greater mortality. What that means is if you're supposed to live to 80, take 20% off of that, and that's 16 years less. And it means that people have about 13 to 16% more cancer and around 20% more heart disease. Another study showed that people who ate meat regularly have 32% more heart disease. So what we're saying is this isn't so healthy, not so good. In terms of Alzheimer's, which a lot of people are concerned about, the research shows a 300% increase in people who are eating meat, fish, chicken, and dairy, and a 500% increase, that's a lot, 5 times higher rate of Alzheimer's in people who are eating trans fatty acids. So we can see that what we're doing is creating, all kinds of chronic disease and shortening our lifestyle, but worse, quality of life goes down. With diabetes, you lose your quality of life. You can't think as well. You get double the amount of Alzheimer's disease, but you get a foggy brain. 70% of the people get some kind of neurological problem. They can't walk so well. 85% develop blindness. These are all reversible, even in a few weeks, in the pre-treatment program that we do, but that's not the point. The point is the rate of diabetes is increasing in kids younger and younger. That's the point. So if somebody gets diabetes at 10, by the time they're 25, it takes about 15 years, they're already started to be debilitated. Mind, legs, general health, all is going downhill, so they can't really participate fully in life. That's what we're talking about. So kind of see the bigger picture of what we're looking at. The United States, 27% of the people over 65 have diabetes, and about 50% now have pre-diabetes over the age of 60. So it's really pretty significant. That's all over the world. Okay, now when you go to a plant source only diet, you also make a few things really much more available. There's somewhere an estimate between, let's say around 40 million people die each year of starvation. You saw Biafra there. Well, people used to be dying, immense amount of people dying of starvation in Biafra. That's all changed because they're eating good food and things have changed. But the point is, the food to feed 100 cows will feed 2,000 people. That's the point. So when you move to a vegan-based diet, we can feed the world 7 times over. There will not be a shortage of food. Right now, you don't feel it so much in Brazil, okay? But the rest of the world is feeling a real water shortage. A real water shortage. And animal agriculture uses about 70% of the water. Regular human use is about 10%, industry uses 20%, and animal agriculture is about 70%. It uses about 10 times more water than a vegan, a plant source only person does, a person who's on that kind of diet. That's dramatic. The pollution in the air, same thing. Whether we have global warming or we don't, what is happening is more and more carbon dioxide is in the air, and it's harder and harder to get enough oxygen and to think straight, literally. So we have all those kinds of things. The air and the water and the earth is being used up. So that's pretty important. Now, animal cruelty, for some people, that's the #1 issue. Because in the United States, I know the statistics are between 10 billion and 25 billion animals are killed each year to feed, the population. Remember, none of that has to happen. None of it has to happen if we're eating a plant source only diet. We go back to the traditional ways. So I kind of mentioned that, and it isn't a new idea. It started about 6,000 years ago. It started even before that with the Sumerians, Anukis, the different groups. Okay? And what happened is that everybody initially was more eating this way. For the first 1,600 years, then the planet started to dry out, then we had the flood, and now we're coming back to that way of life, which is needed for healthy living and spiritual living. Okay. So this is a little bit of a clue for Saturday night. We'll be talking about Kundalini and spiritual nutrition. The key, again, is eating in a way it creates a quiet mind. That's it. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. That's Sanskrit for that yoga is creating and quieting the mind. So that's the goal. And then I'll explain in detail about the Kundalini, but this is part of the eating. As I mentioned, diet affects consciousness. We got peace with the body. And now the question is, well, okay, so what do we do with a live food diet? What are we going to do? So first, people say, well, is there enough protein? Can I get enough protein? Well, the first thing we have to know is to be successful, and I have about 99% success rate, okay, is this. We vary. We're all unique. There's a big range of how much protein you need. Some people just need a little bit, maybe 10%, and other people need 25%. So the protein varies. Now, there's another thing, is that there's a special pathway called the mTOR pathway, which is somewhere between 35 and 75 grams of protein. Stimulates longevity and has an anti-cancer effect. So 75 grams of protein is really easy to get. Some people, you only need very little, 35 grams. So you can't miss with that. So it's really, really easy to get adequate protein on a plant-source diet. We have our nuts and our seeds and things like that. There's all kinds of protein concentrates out there. And even in the leafy greens and sprouts, there's a fair amount of protein. Mother's milk has about 4%, 2.5 to 4% protein. Babies grow pretty well on that. So mostly people are eating too much protein, which isn't so good for them. Now, there are other problems that happen, but I want to make it very clear. It happens for everybody, meat eaters and vegans, plant source only people. For example, above the age of 60, 50% of the population is B12 deficient. And only a half of 1% is vegan. So I'm talking about the whole meat-eating population is deficient in B12. Now, vegans will get deficient a little sooner, but really the meat eaters catch up. So it's 40% meat eaters, 80% vegans after 6 years, but in the long run, at the higher doses, like 400 to 450 millimoles per in the blood, okay, nanograms, is really the optimal. At that point, everybody's equally deficient. So everybody should be worrying about B12 and be taking some kind of B12 supplementation. The human organism is something's happened, and we're not able to process the B12 or get it from our foods like we maybe did even a few hundred years ago. So that's one thing. The other thing is long-chain omega-3 fatty acids. They're needed for brain development. They protect you against depression. They help with clarity of thinking. They keep you emotionally balanced. They keep you, actually, people who have adequate omega-3s have 21% less premature deliveries. There are many, many things the omega-3s do. But basically, they balance the brain and make everything in your body really work better in terms of heart disease, prevention of heart disease. Again, I'll be talking more about this on Sunday, but I'm giving you a preview. So adequate omega-3s, where do you get them? Well, not really from fish. Fish only has a little bit. Where you're going to get them is from what we call yellow algae. Okay, and there are a few herbs like purslane. Does purslane grow here? Does anybody know how to translate that, purslane? Well, it's a succulent herb, and that has the long chain omega-3s. And there's an algae called blue-green algae that has a long chain omega-3s. And those are DHA and EPA. In the United States, 90% of the pregnant women are deficient. You need DHA for brain development, and you also need it for eyesight development. It's also the main cause, DHA deficiency, for postpartum depression. What was that? Okay, I'll keep going. So DHA is what we're talking about. Very important you get that if you want to be successful vegan. Another one is iodine. There's like key minerals. And in the United States, in the 1930s, even the Congress said 99% of people are deficient in minerals. Now, that's pretty interesting. But the key minerals are magnesium. A low magnesium is associated with insulin resistance. It's associated with heart disease. It's associated with high blood pressure. Those are kind of things. Iodine is another very important mineral. It is needed for all kinds of brain function. We know that women who have sufficient iodine will have considerably less fibrocystic breast and breast cancer. The Japanese women have a third of the breast cancer that American women have, but they have 30 times more iodine. So we need to make sure we're getting our sea vegetables in to our system that have the high minerals. They also are very high in calcium and magnesium, and we also need chromium and vanadium. These are really key minerals. They make everything work in the body, and they're also very important to protect against diabetes, particularly type 2 diabetes. So adequate minerals are kind of really important for us. Now, there are some what we call fat-soluble vitamins that we want to try to get in. Vitamin D. How many people are aware of the importance of vitamin D? Well, some. Okay, good. So vitamin D, some people estimate it protects us against about 70% of cancer. And it protects against heart disease, protects against senility, protects against diabetes. It's one of the key nutrients for treating diabetes. But the key is vitamin D doesn't stand by itself. It also works with vitamin A and also vitamin K. And they work off the same genes, and they have to work in harmony. So really, to be successful in the plant source approach, you need D, K, okay, A, and also E. And they all work together. They protect your arteries. They make calcium deposits in the bone. There's all kinds of things that get done that make a big, big difference in terms of your overall health. So these are things you have to be really aware of in the kind of the whole story about the deficiencies. Now, there's one more thing that is what I call anti-nutrients. These are things that block nutrient uptake that you can get in a vegan diet. So there's two. You have your oxalates and your phytates. Okay, your oxalates are what you see in spinach and turnips and leeks and actually soy as well, and wheat. And they create a lot of free radicals, and they also create a lot of oxalic acid, which can create stones. So what do you do about that? Well, actually, a diet that's high in enzymes, like with live foods, pretty much protects you against that. And the same thing with phytates. They create a situation where they block your mineral uptake. And believe it or not, there's a simple solution. You take wheat and let it sprout over 3 days in kind of distilled water, and it neutralizes all the phytates. So these are little tricks, but they make an important difference in the big picture. Now, I talked about D in A, and people say, well, I can eat A, I eat lots of greens and the carotenes, but that isn't really what happens, because about 50% of the people don't convert the carotene to the vitamin A. So that's a big part of the population. That's a genetic thing that comes through. So those are your big players, your omega-3s, the vitamin D, vitamin K. Now the things that cause a real big problem are the trans fatty acids. These are cooked animal fats. That's what we're talking about. And particularly if it's cooked above 300 degrees. I'm not saying just warm it, but you cook above 300 degrees, they convert to trans fatty acids, and they actually are really bad for creating heart disease and diabetes and a variety of things. Now, I'm going to cover some of these other topics on omega-3s in more depth, because today is to kind of introduce you to things. Now, the one thing I do want to talk about now about success is that one other thing besides the omega-3s, you need cholesterol. Now, I'm sure you've heard that cholesterol is bad for you, but all the research is now saying that is not the case at all. That was a piece of misinformation that we carried on since 1953. What we do know now is women live longer with a higher cholesterol. I didn't say shorter, I said longer with a really higher cholesterol, and it doesn't matter that much for men. You know, a cholesterol between 160 and 260 is safe for everybody, but women with what we would consider a high cholesterol, 270, actually live 28% longer. So don't be afraid of getting cholesterol into your diet, okay? It's really quite important. And we'll talk about this more, but this is the key. There's no evidence in the newest research at the top journals to support the mythical belief that limiting saturated fat intake is beneficial or protective for heart health. But we do know this, like with omega-3s, if a person is deficient in cholesterol, they'll have a higher rate of suicide, double the rate, and the very lowest amount, 6 times higher rate of suicide, more accidents, more violence, more Parkinson's disease, more stroke. So low cholesterol is a problem. So that's important, because a lot of people have gotten, at least in the United States, very much caught up worrying about cholesterol. And that's just not true. So low cholesterol is the big problem. Now, I'm going to go to one other place. I want to just give you a preview a little bit about the diabetes, and that is what we call a normal glucose tolerance test. Let me explain what that is that when you give somebody sugar, it's a curve of how their body handles the sugar. What you're looking at is a normal glucose tolerance test, non-diabetic. Now what you're looking at is something you may not have heard of called glucose spiking. Starts with a normal blood sugar, but then it spikes real high. And that high spike has many of the symptoms, ultimately, long-term symptoms as diabetes. So it's like a form of pre-diabetes, but it's called glucose spiking. Anything above 110 begins to kill beta cells of the pancreas, which makes insulin. Good, thanks. So this is another example of spiking, and there are many problems when people become a plant source only. They tend to think they need a lot of sugar, which is a source of a great amount of ill health. And this is a list. You can kind of look at some of them, but it's heart disease, it's cancer, it's diabetes, it's ovarian cysts, it's hyperactivity, it's allergies. It just goes on, and the same is with fructose. Excess fructose is the leading cause of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So we have to be kind of careful with the sugar, the glucose and fructose part of things. Just be modest. The fruit sugars, 25 grams of fruit sugar, it's fine. What's 25 grams? 2 bananas a day, that kind of thing, a bowl of berries. There's nothing, I'm not saying don't have fruit, but I'm saying we need to be a little moderate. In the United States, people are eating about 81 grams of fructose, and that's about 4 to 5 times higher than it should be. And that is really detrimental to the whole picture. So this is the fructose facts. I just want to get to one piece here. And fructose also feeds cancer cells 10 times more than glucose. Glucose and fructose are the main food for cancer cells, so that's another reason we want to keep low. So we see that you have heart disease, high blood pressure, obesity, gout, kidney stones, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, brain inflammation, and inflames the glia cells of the brain. This is fructose now. Everybody thinks it's no problem. So that kind of brings us to really the final point here, is that in each generation we're given the cure for that generation. In a vegan, 80% live food diet is the medicine for this generation and for the future. So that's what we've been given, okay? What my research shows, particularly with the diabetes, which diabetes is really what we call accelerated aging. That's all it is. It's just accelerated aging. Is a diet that's 25 to 45% fat, raw plant fat, 25 to 45% carbohydrate. And when I say carbohydrate, I mean leafy greens, I mean vegetables, that kind of thing. And 10 to 25% protein. Because remember, one of the keys to being successful is that we're all really unique. We have between 20 and 30,000 genes, maybe 200,000 gene variations. So the key to be really successful with the diet is to understand whether your person needs a slightly higher protein, lower carbohydrate, or slightly lower protein and a higher carbohydrate diet. Fat seems to be about the same, between 25 and 45%. So when you individualize your diet, and you take the overview of a 80% plant source only, I'm going to add the word organic in here, that's high in water and low in what we say glycemic foods, foods that make sugar. It's individualized to your diet, to who you are as a person, to your constitution. It's very important. And I'll add, made with love, you have a very winning situation for what I call enduring radiant health. So that at any age, you're able to be at the height of your mental, physical, emotional, sexual, all levels of your power. It does not need to diminish. So I bring that out to you. And we have models of that. I'll just mention it. 120 after Moses had beaten the two giants, Og and Sihon, it said his vision had not dimmed, and his vital force was as strong as ever. So we have a model of how to do that, and that's really what we're working on. And then use the word again, enduring, radiant health. That's what I'm talking about. And this is everything. This is the whole picture. Diabetes is accelerated aging and decreasing radiant health. Okay? But we have choices. We can make the best choices in our lives. We really can do that. And that's really what this is about. And we're talking about, again, the spirituality tomorrow. And then also in terms of more in-depth diabetes with a lot more detail on Sunday. So you have this big picture. But just keep the word in your mind. Enduring radiant health. My age is 70. I'm stronger. When I was an American football player, I didn't play soccer, okay? So American football player at 20 in terms of strength and many, many things. So it's like you can do it. That's actually the personal research that I'm doing. You know, it's like, look, how do you do this? Because you can't talk about it if you can't do it. And so I'm talking from that vantage point of being 70 years of around the sun. We call it 70 cycles around the sun with that enduring radiant health. So may you be blessed with the inspiration for your own life to find your rhythm, your holy rhythm, to create enduring radiant health for yourself. Okay, great. So now I'm actually preparing for another ceremony.